The first thing I saw was her shoe, pink, half-burned, lying in the middle of the road. I didn't hear the screams, not right away. Just silence, then the echo of metal twisting like bones breaking. They said it was a gas leak. But when you've spent years dismantling cartel bombs, you know the difference by smell alone. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. I remember the smell of the bus that day: diesel, burning rubber, plastic, and something else I can't describe. It clung to my skin long after the firefighters dragged me away. My daughter, Lila, was on that bus. She was 7. She liked drawing cartoon dogs on her lunchbox and thought war medals looked too heavy. That morning, she hugged me twice, once at the door and once when she forgot her crayons. I replay that last hug like a broken tape, because minutes later, she was gone. They told me to stand back. But training like mine doesn't switch off. I scanned for threats, cordons, escape routes. My brain went straight to combat mode, while my heart kept asking one question. Why her? The explosion wasn't random. The pattern was surgical, low yield, directional blast, C4 dispersion designed to fracture the undercarriage. No amateur could plan that. Someone wanted a message sent. The news reporters called it a tragic gas explosion. They always do when the truth is too expensive to print. But that night, when I stood by what used to be the bus stop, I saw something the coroner missed: a fragment of steel marked with an engraving. Small, faint, but I recognized it instantly. A 3-line serpent insignia. Cartel symbol. My stomach turned to stone. Because years ago, when I was still Delta Force, I carved that same mark into the graves of the men who took my team from me in Honduras. We called them Los Filamentos, the cartel ghosts who supplied U.S. enemies with American weapons. We dismantled their network, burned their supply routes, killed their top chemist. But one of them had disappeared, Rafael Solano. Rumor was he went underground. That insignia told me he hadn't stayed buried. I knew then, this wasn't about random school kids or faulty fuel lines. This was payback, targeted, precise, and it reached my home. I tried telling the police. They said I was grieving. The agent handling the case even offered me therapy pamphlets. I didn't argue. I just nodded, shook his hand, and walked out quietly. But that same day, I opened the safe I swore I'd never touch again. Inside were the ghosts of a life I buried. Encrypted drives, mission notes, field photos, untraceable IDs. I stared at them for an hour before locking it again. I told myself, don't go back in there, Mason. That man can't be unleashed again. But then there was Harper, my wife. She barely spoke for days. I tried to hold her at night, but she turned away. When I brought up the insignia, she flinched like I'd hit her. Said, please, can we not do this again? Like she already knew where it was leading. Her voice cracked when she whispered, we lost our daughter, Mason. Not a target, not a mission, our daughter. And I agreed, outwardly. But inside, the soldier in me was already moving. I reviewed city surveillance footage frame by frame. Found a black SUV idling 1 block away from the bus minutes before it blew. License plates, fake. But the bodywork had a custom rear dent, angled exactly like the kind cartel convoys sustained from armored convoys in South Mexico. Someone intentionally used a decoy vehicle. 3 nights later, a military buddy of mine, Blake, called from Virginia. He owed me a favor from a long time ago, one that saved his career. I told him about the SUV. He said nothing for 15 seconds, then muttered, Mason, don't chase this one. I've heard chatter about something called Operation Riptide. It's connected. When I asked who was behind it, he said, off-books Mexican cartel. Stateside operations. Hybrid funding. I can dig, but if you start sniffing around, they'll smell blood. He hung up before I could ask more. For days, I barely slept. The sound of sirens and news anchors became background noise. Harper avoided eye contact, and the silence between us stretched like barbed wire. Then, one night when she thought I was asleep, I heard her on the phone. Quiet. Whispering. He already suspects something, she said. Pause. I can't do this anymore. Please don't call again. My chest froze. I waited for her to hang up before slipping outside. My brain spun every scenario. Grief hotline. Maybe her mother. Maybe someone else. But the next morning, when I checked our bank account, I found an overseas transfer. Cyprus. Offshore. $78,200 withdrawn under a name I hadn't heard in years. Rafe Solano. Raphael's younger brother. The same man who promised, if I can't kill you in the field, I'll make you watch your world burn. And now his name was tied to my wife's account. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I spent that whole day in silence, pretending to fix the kitchen sink, pretending to eat. But my mind was somewhere else entirely, connecting dots no husband should ever have to connect. That night, I sat outside on the porch, and the air felt colder than it should have been. I opened an old photo album. Harper smiling, holding Lila near the ocean. Happiness frozen in a world that didn't exist anymore. I realized something then. Revenge doesn't wake you up screaming. It whispers. It crawls into quiet moments, making everything normal feel wrong. I whispered to myself, you took everything from me. You expect me to just live with that? No. You released the wrong ghost. Under the cracked porch light, I reached under the steps where I'd buried a waterproof case 6 years ago. Inside was my old military sidearm, one I was never supposed to keep. It felt heavier now, almost resentful of being needed again. I held it for a moment and said quietly, this isn't about rage. It's about balance. Because some men pray for peace, others build it with their own hands. The next day, I put on civilian clothes and visited the accident site again. Most of the debris was gone, except one melted piece of metal that looked like part of a detonator frame. I kicked some dust, pretending to look for my keys, and pocketed it. When I got home, Harper was sitting at the table. She looked pale, eyes red, phone in her hand. Where were you? She asked softly. Graveyard, I lied. She stared for a moment, then turned her gaze to the floor, whispering, please don't do what I know you're going to do. I froze. And what's that? She met my eyes finally. The man I married would have died for family. The man standing here just wants payback. Then she walked away. That night, I cleaned the detonator fragment. And beneath the soot, I saw the stamped code. S12, EX, the same build signature used in Delta smokescreen missions. Military grade. Restricted. Which meant someone wasn't just sending a message, they had access. And in my gut, I knew someone inside the military world helped orchestrate this. That's when I opened the safe again. Not as a father, but as Staff Sergeant Mason Reed, Delta Unit, Ghost Protocol. The part of me I'd buried was now wide awake. They bombed her school bus to get to me. Now, I would find out why. And when I did, there wouldn't be another explosion. Just silence, the kind that ends nightmares. The next morning, I woke on the couch with the detonator fragment still in my hand. I hadn't meant to fall asleep. I'd meant to analyze it under the microscope light, cross-reference alloy markings, prove to myself I wasn't chasing ghosts. Instead, I dozed off in the stink of gun oil and grief. When I opened my eyes, dawn leaked through the blinds, painting everything the color of ash. Harper's footsteps padded down the hallway, slow, hesitant. She stopped when she saw me. You didn't come to bed again, she said quietly. I just nodded. Words felt useless between us now. She poured coffee, sat across from me, her fingers trembling slightly as she set the cup down. Did you talk to anyone? She asked. Just an old friend from Delta, I said. Name's Blake. He's helping me check something. She frowned. Mason, you promised you weren't going to. I promised I'd find out who killed our daughter. I snapped. Then softer, that's the only promise that matters now. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. She just whispered, be careful what you wake up. Some things don't go back to sleep. She left the room. The door clicked shut like a period at the end of a sentence I didn't want to read. I spent the rest of the day buried in files. Everything from the school district's maintenance records to federal contractor invoices. Nothing pointed to negligence. Everything smelled clean on paper, which only made it dirtier in reality. That evening, Blake's encrypted message came through. Call me. Do not record. I opened the secure line. Talk to me. He spoke in a low, clipped tone. The S12EX series you found. It's not common. Only a handful of batches were produced here. 3 went overseas. 1 stayed inside U.S. borders. Where? West Texas, he said. A private training facility used by a contract task force. Anti-cartel operations, officially. The requisitions authorized under a name. Dominic Hale. My hand froze on the phone. That can't be right. Dominic's dead. That's what the file says, Blake replied. But the death certificate was redacted 6 months after it was signed. And Mason, the approval date on that C4 batch? 2 weeks before your daughter's school bus exploded. Silence filled the line. You still there? He asked. Yeah, I said, my throat tight. Where did the order payment come from? Offshore accounts funneled through Cyprus. I traced one deposit back to your wife's joint savings. I closed my eyes. Jesus? You wanted the truth, he said quietly. Now you've got the beginnings of it. I want proof, I whispered. Something concrete. Then you'll need access to her laptop, he said. She's the connection point, whether she knows it or not. The call ended. I stared at the black screen until my reflection became a stranger. That night, Harper said she was going to bed early. I waited half an hour before entering her office. The laptop sat open on the desk, glowing like something alive. I hesitated, then slid in a flash drive and copied the mail archive. While it loaded, I spotted a folder titled Family Invoices. Inside, most files were blank, but one was labeled with a random string of numbers. I opened it. Offshore transactions, all routed through the same financial intermediary, Solano Holdings. My pulse hammered. When the transfer finished, I removed the drive, wiped fingerprints, and slipped back into the hallway. But Harper was standing at the end, half in darkness. What are you doing? She asked. I froze. I couldn't sleep, I said. Thought I'd check email. She took a step forward. From my office? The lie tasted like metal. Your laptop was closer. She didn't move for several seconds, then said quietly, whatever you think you're protecting us from, you're wrong. Then tell me what I'm missing, I said. Tell me what Rafe Solano has to do with our accounts. Her face went pale. How do you know that name? Because it's on a transfer, I said. Your signature's on it. She backed away until her shoulder hit the wall. It's not what you think. Then make me believe that. Tears slid down her cheeks. He said if I didn't help, they'd come for me. For you. It was supposed to be just money, nothing violent. Who said that? She hesitated. Rafe and someone else. His contact in the States. The air between us thickened. What contact? I don't know his name, she whispered. Only that he served with you once. Something about using protocol access. I already knew the answer before she said it. Dominic, I breathed. Her eyes widened. You know him? I buried him, I said. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was heavier than shouting. Finally, she whispered. Mason, he told Rafe you were a liability. That if they didn't hit you first, you'd expose everything. I stepped back, the world tilting. So they aimed for me and killed our daughter. Mason, please, she started, reaching for me. I turned away. You don't get to please me. Not tonight. An hour later, I sat in the garage with old mission photos spread across the hood of my car. Dominic's smiling face stared back at me, the man I once called brother. We'd survived ambushes, shared food in the desert, watched our friends bleed out side by side. And now his name was soaked in my daughter's blood. I called Blake again. We're past theories, I said. I want his location. Working on it, he replied. But Mason, if he's back from the dead, someone powerful put him there. Don't move without a plan. I stopped planning the day they blew that bus, I said. Now I move. He sighed. Then you're on your own, brother. I've been on my own since the smoke cleared. I answered and hung up. I holstered my sidearm, locked the garage, and stared down the quiet street. Somewhere in that darkness, the men who murdered my daughter were breathing, planning, thinking they'd gotten away with it. They hadn't. Not for me. Not ever. The house didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a war zone before the first bullet. Quiet, the kind of quiet where every creak has a meaning. Harper moved around me like a shadow the next morning. No words, no questions, just two people pretending to share a life that was already burning down. I poured coffee, but it tasted like metal. She sat at the table picking at a slice of toast she wouldn't eat. The sun coming through the blinds cut her face into strips of light and guilt. Finally, I spoke. "How long have you known Dominic was alive?" Her fork stopped midair. "I didn't know," she whispered. "Harper," I said, sliding the printed bank statement toward her. "That transfer wasn't random. You authorized 80 grand to Solano Holdings. That's not pocket money." Tears welled, but didn't fall. "I thought it was protection. Rafe said it would keep us safe. Keep you safe." "Safe?" I slammed the counter. "They murdered our little girl." Her voice cracked. "I never thought they'd touch her. They said it was leverage, not." She looked away. "I'm sorry, Mason." "Sorry." I laughed once, bitter. "You wired money to the same man whose explosives I disarmed in Honduras. There's no sorry big enough for that." "I was scared," she screamed back. "Every time you talked in your sleep, every nightmare from those missions, I could tell you still lived there. Rafe said if I helped, they'd leave us alone." I stared at her, every muscle trembling. "And you believed him?" "I wanted to," she whispered. "Because the man I married, he never came home from the war." The words sat between us like shrapnel. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had come back breathing, but not alive. Still, hearing her say it felt like she'd slit open whatever heart I had left. I turned, leaning on the counter. "Tell me everything." Harper breathed shakily. "After the funeral in Honduras, Rafe contacted me. He said Dominic survived, but barely. He blamed you. Said you abandoned the team to save yourself. He sent proof. Old comm logs. Altered maybe, but I couldn't tell. You thought I left them?" My voice came out low and dangerous. I didn't want to believe it," she said. "But he told me if I kept quiet and helped with a few transfers, they'd erase your name from some classified list. They made it sound like mercy." I looked at her hands, shaking, small, human, then at the wedding ring still on her finger. "Mercy," I repeated, almost to myself. "That's what they called it." She nodded, crying now. "Please, Mason, you can't go after them. They'll kill you next." "No," I said quietly. "They'll try." I left her sitting there, sobbing into her hands, and walked to the garage. When I opened the old storage unit behind the house, dust hit my lungs like memory. Inside sat my trunk. U.S. Army issue, olive paint faded and dented. The padlock clicked open, revealing fragments of a man I'd tried to bury. A folded uniform, combat knife, encrypted satellite phone, suppressed sidearms, photos of Delta operators half smiling in desert light. I touched the knife handle, tracing the engraving. "Truth is loyalty." It was Dominic's handwriting, back when it meant something. A knock behind me made me spin. It was Harper, standing in the open doorway, arms wrapped tight around herself. "You can't bring her back, Mason." "I know," I said, "but I can make sure nobody else loses what we lost." "That's not justice," she whispered. "It's suicide." "Maybe, but it's the only language they understand." She stepped closer, trembling. "Please don't become that man again." I met her eyes. "That man's the one they're afraid of." She covered her mouth and stumbled back into the house. The sound of the door closing was final, maybe permanent. I sat there alone, staring at the trunk. One by one, I laid everything out on the concrete: gear, files, ammo. I checked each piece like ritual. The smell of oil and dust steadied me. When I slipped the old Delta patch into my pocket, something inside clicked back into place. The part of me that calculates distance, time, outcomes. The part that doesn't freeze when the world burns. Flashback. Honduras, 7 years earlier. Blinding sun. Jungle air thick with sweat and gunpowder. Dominic yelling, "Move!" Flank left. Rafe Solano's convoy rattling toward the river. Bullets snapping through leaves like angry wasps. We'd cornered them, thought it was over. Then the explosion tore through the tree line. Same C4 signature as the bus years later. I remember diving behind a fallen log, Dominic screaming as shrapnel cut his face. When the dust settled, half our team was gone, Rafe vanished, and command pulled us out before we could finish. Dominic never forgave me for calling extraction. He said, "We were supposed to end this." I'd said, "Orders changed." He walked away, bleeding and furious. 2 days later, his vehicle hit a roadside mine. Or so the report said. Now I knew different. Back in the garage, present day, I opened my notebook and wrote one sentence below the last entry. If Dominic's alive, he's working with Rafe. And Harper was their key. For a second, the smell of smoke came back, not from memory, but from outside. I stepped onto the porch. The wind carried the faint scent of burning fuel. Down the street, a car slowed, idled, then drove off. Tinted windows. No plates. They weren't even trying to hide anymore. I went back inside, turned off every light, and pulled the laptop from my jacket. Inside Harper's copied emails, one curious attachment caught my eye. A PDF labeled Protocol. Password locked. Size just under 500 kilobytes. I tapped the keys of an old brute force script. As it ran, my reflection stared back from the dark screen. Hollow eyes. Determined. Ready. At 2:14 a.m., the window flashed access granted. The file opened to a single line of text. If you are reading this, the kill protocol is active. Terminate read. Priority level 1. I closed the laptop slowly. So that was it. My own unit, my own brothers in arms, had signed my death warrant. I leaned back in my chair and whispered to no one. You should have finished the job when you had the chance. Because now I wasn't just a father in mourning. I was a soldier with nothing left to lose. Every soldier learns to recognize silence. There's the calm kind, and then there's the kind that feels like something watching you breathe. The house had been full of that second kind for days. After reading the protocol file, I sat in the darkness until sunrise, one thought repeating. Terminate read. Priority level 1. Someone inside the system still had power. Someone was spending military resources to erase me, same as erasing evidence. The next move had to be precise. By noon I was 2 states over, walking through a crowded gun show where nobody blinked at tactical gear. I carried a cheap duffel with my phone buried under layers of foil wrap. The noise, the crowd, it was camouflage. From the corner booth, an old voice said, "Didn't think I'd ever see you again, Reed." Colonel Grant looked smaller now, white hair cropped the same military way. His handshake was still iron. "Sir," I said quietly, "I need a favor." He studied my face. "You need more than that." I handed him a flash drive. This code came from a detonator that killed my daughter. Batch S12EX. I need all locations it's been used, all active task force contacts, and every contractor who drew payment from Solano Holdings in the last 2 years. Grant's jaw tightened. That's CIA-controlled material. Then pretend I'm not asking. For a long time, we just stared at each other over boxes of rifle parts. Then he nodded slowly. "Give me 48 hours. When I turned to leave, he said, "Mason, if you find what you're looking for, make sure you're ready to live with it." I stopped living the day of the explosion, I said. Back home, Harper wasn't there. Her phone sat on the counter, still charging. The screen blinked once with a notification. "D. We need to meet." 5 p.m. My stomach dropped. I checked the call log. Half a dozen encrypted numbers, all routed through overseas servers. She hadn't just been scared. She was managing something behind my back. I waited. At 4:30, she came downstairs, hair tied back, eyes swollen but focused. "Where are you going?" I asked. "Just out," she said, grabbing her keys. "Out where?" She froze, sensing my tone. You're tracking me now? I almost told her I had to. Instead, I said, if anything happens, call me. She left without answering. Tail lights vanished down the street. I followed in my truck from 5 cars back, keeping distance through traffic. She drove north, past downtown, into an industrial district where warehouses leaned toward each other like eavesdropping giants. She parked behind an abandoned storage facility. A black sedan waited there. I killed my lights, lifted binoculars. A man stepped out. Broad shoulders, short-cropped hair, moved like someone who'd spent years on the range. Even through the haze, the gait was muscle memory I couldn't forget. Dominic, I whispered. He hugged Harper. She clung to him like relief itself. For a second the scene folded in on itself. The friend I once trusted with my life. The woman I once thought would fight beside me forever. Whatever words they traded got swallowed by wind. Then Dominic handed her a small envelope. She looked inside, startled, shaking her head. He rested a hand on her shoulder. She broke down, nodding through tears. I tightened my grip around the wheel until my knuckles clicked. They spoke another minute, then split directions. Harper back toward town, Dominic disappearing between warehouses with 2 armed men sliding out of the shadows to flank him. So he was alive, and he wasn't hiding. He was operating. That night, Grant called through the secure line. I did what you asked, he said. Your instincts are dead on. Los Filamentos merged with a private security shell 3 years ago. Their MO isn't street dope anymore. It's coercion by collateral. Schools were soft targets to pressure state officials. My jaw clenched. So they used children. Yeah. Your bus was one of 3 hits designed to sabotage an education funding vote. The driver you lost? Former DEA informant. Collateral order authorized under a directive code R12. Who signed R12? I asked. He hesitated. You're not authorized. Give me a name, Grant. Silence stretched thin. Finally, he said, Dominic Hale. He's their field coordinator. My hand trembled around the receiver. Then he didn't just survive. He switched sides. It happens, Grant said grimly. Some men never come home. Some men should have stayed buried. I answered and ended the call. Hours later, Harper returned. I was waiting in the living room, lights off, coffee in hand. Where were you? I asked. She stiffened. Grocery store. Tell me another. She swallowed hard. Mason, I saw you with him, I said. Dominic. She froze completely. You followed me? Yes. Because you stopped telling me the truth. Her voice broke. He said he could fix everything. That he had photos, evidence, things that could clear your name. I just wanted to. Fix what? I said, stepping closer. The part where you wired criminals our savings? Or the part where you're talking to a ghost who tried to kill me? Tears streaked down her cheeks. You don't understand what he's capable of. Oh, I do, I said. He was standing next to me the first time Solano's men detonated C4. I know exactly what he's capable of. She reached for my arm. Please. You'll only make it worse. For who? For both of us. She was shaking. So was I? But before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop following your wife, read. Next time, I won't miss. Attached was a photo. The scope crosshairs centered on Harper through our kitchen window. I looked at her, terrified and crying, and felt something inside me snap. They're watching us, I said softly. They think they can scare me back into my cage. I turned toward the dark window, muscles burning like live wire. They're about to find out what fear really feels like. I stopped pretending the house was safe. Curtains stayed drawn, lights off after sunset. Harper hadn't left the guest room in a day and a half. Fear had turned her voice small. Blake's file arrived at dawn. Coordinates in Sonora, an abandoned mining town 2 miles from the border. The name on the lease was Dominic Hale. The payment chain ran through Solano Holdings again. By the time the sun topped the trees, I'd packed the trunk, sidearm, field knife, encrypted radio, and a single folded note that read, for Lila, for truth. At noon I called Blake. You tracking? I asked. Yeah, he said. Satellite movement around that mining zone. Heat signatures. Vehicle shifts every 6 hours. They're reinforcing it. Dominic-level reinforcements. Worse, he said flatly. Delta contractors mixed with cartel muscle. Someone gave him official access again. I leaned on the workbench, staring at the map pinned to the wall. He's running a paramilitary combine, using old protocols. You can't take that alone, Mason. I took worse, I said. Except back then I had brothers I could trust. There was a pause. Blake's tone softened. If you go, there's no coming back clean. You'll cross federal lines. Then I'll make sure the reason crosses with me. That night I sat at the kitchen table, staring at Harper's old wedding photo. We looked so young. Two people who thought love could outrun ghosts. I turned on my phone and recorded. My name is Staff Sergeant Mason Reed. I authorized this as statement of record. I'm about to expose an internal operation codenamed R12. It's a joint criminal network between U.S.-based private security fronts and Los Filamentos cartel. They killed my daughter under Directive R12 as collateral. If you find this file, it means I didn't make it back. I ended the recording and uploaded it to 3 anonymous servers. Harper appeared in the doorway. What did you just do? Insurance, I said. She stepped closer. Dominic called. He wants to meet. Says he can end it without blood. What did you tell him? That I needed to think. Don't, I said sharply. He's tying up loose ends, Harper. You're one of them. Her eyes filled. Then what are you? The last one who still remembers what truth cost. She reached out, fingers trembling. If you go down there. I was already down there, I said. This is just unfinished business. The drive to Sonora took 9 hours. I crossed the desert at night, engine humming low. The radio hissed static as wind scraped across empty sand. Every mile felt heavier, like memory pressing its boot on my chest. Grant's words echoed. Some men should have stayed buried. Too late for that. At 0430, I parked a mile from the site, hiked the ridge with night vision goggles. Below, the compound glowed faint green through darkness. 6 buildings, armed patrols, signals on repeat frequencies I recognized from old Delta channels. He was using our own playbook. I keyed the mic. Blake, you reading? Static, then his voice. Copy. I've got eyes on 6 men and a command trailer. Hale's using modified comms, same broadband encryption we used in Kandahar. Mason, Blake said, you can't do this solo. At least pull Grant. No time, I said. They've got an outbound convoy prepping. If Dominic moves that drive, we lose everything. Mason, don't. I killed the radio. Moving through the compound was like slipping back in time. Every habit returned. Footsteps measured by breath, corners cleared by reflection. I stole through shadows until I reached the trailer. Voices inside. Dominic's deep drawl. Everything's aligning. Solano's shipping tonight. Once the files are out, Reed's confession is meaningless. Another voice, Rafe Solano himself. I hadn't seen his face since Honduras. Scar cut down his cheek like a map of all the lives he'd burned. Reed won't make it this far, Rafe said. He only had anger left in him. Dominic chuckled. Anger built half the wars we ever fought. I slipped closer, hand on the knife. The walls were thin enough to hear my own heartbeat. Then Dominic's tone shifted, colder. Still, just in case Harper tries to warn him, handle it. Make it quick. Rafe laughed. Consider it done. Something inside me turned to steel. I moved before thinking, kicked open the door, gun up. Rafe reached first. One shot. He dropped across the table, eyes wide, choking on his last word. Dominic froze, disbelief flickering into fury. Mason, you should have stayed dead with the rest of them. You first, I said. We circled each other. No more uniforms. No flags. Just history bleeding out in real time. You think this is revenge, he said. It's evolution. Government sold us to them years ago. I just stopped pretending otherwise. I saw what pretending cost, I said, firing once. The bullet clipped his shoulder. He sprawled behind the console, knocking papers everywhere. A wall of gunfire erupted from outside. I smashed through the window, dropped to sand, and rolled under the truck tires. Shouting in Spanish blended with radio orders. Smoke grenades bloomed gray. I sprinted for the outpost fence, feeling rounds shred air inches from my head. At the ridge, I looked back, Dominic limping through the haze, clutching his shoulder, yelling orders. He was still alive. Good, because this wasn't finished. I reached the truck, slammed the door, engines roaring. The desert rippled behind me with explosions lighting the night. Whatever files Dominic had left, they were ashes now, but so was my option for peace. I keyed Blake's line again. It's done. Rafe's down. Hill's alive. What the hell did you do? What I had to. He cursed softly. You just lit up an international incident. They'll call it terrorism. Then they'll finally know what fear feels like. Before sunrise, I sent the recording of my confession to Grant. 1 minute later, a message popped on my secure app. Dominic's heading north. They won't arrest him. Orders from above. I gripped the wheel and whispered to the empty road. Then I'll arrest him my way. The desert swallowed headlights fast. By the time I crossed into Arizona, only the stars followed me. Dominic was ahead. Convoy of 3 SUVs, unmarked, moving like ghosts that knew the route by heart. Every few miles, I caught his taillights and fell back again. Patience was the only weapon I trusted now. Just after midnight, they turned off the highway onto an abandoned airstrip, rough dirt kicking under their tires. I parked 2 miles out, grabbed the night vision scope, and watched the scene unfold. Dominic stepped out of the lead vehicle, shoulder bandaged. He barked orders in short bursts of English and Spanish. A cargo plane waited at the far end of the strip, engines spinning low. Even from here, I could tell what was inside. Drives, paperwork, evidence that would disappear forever if he got airborne. I moved fast and quiet, hugging the shadow side of the dunes, ghosting closer until the wind carried their voices. Load it all. No delays, Dominic said. We're wheels up in 10. One of his men asked, and Reed? Dominic smirked. He's already dead. He just doesn't know it. That was enough for me. The shot came clean through the noise. One guard dropped. Another spun before he knew direction. Chaos hit like thunder. I kept low, counted rounds, moved between wrecks until I hit the hangar wall. Dominic ducked behind a crate, pistol drawn. You really don't quit, he called. Neither do you, I said. We circled each other through smoke and echoing gunshots. Angels and devils both wear combat boots. He shouted over the roar. They were supposed to kill you, not the kid. That bus was for you. The words hit harder than bullets. I stared at him, gun steady. You set the plan in motion. You handed them the detonators. You don't get to blame it on collateral. I was trying to protect what was left of us, he yelled. The government wanted someone expendable. They chose you. Mason. Don't. I snapped. Don't you dare make this sound noble. He lunged from cover, firing. I caught his shoulder again, spinning him backward. His gun skittered away on the concrete floor. I closed in, pressing mine into his chest. Give me one reason not to end this. He coughed blood, smiled faintly. Because once I'm gone, you'll never find who funded it. Solano's dead. The real bosses are up north, private defense contracts. You exposed them, and maybe your daughter's death means something. Silence. Even the rotors seemed to pause. I could live with that, I said, lowering the gun just long enough to slam my fist into his jaw. He went down cold. I knelt, frisked him fast. Phone, keycard, small chip-sized tracker beacon. Perfect. I pocketed it, duct-taped the second tracker to the inside of his jacket. He'd lead me to the rest long before he realized. Outside, gunfire still crackled. I set a diversion charge by the fuel drums and sprinted to the SUV line. One spark, small boom, distraction born. While his surviving men scrambled, I drove the nearest truck straight through the fence. Flames chased in the rearview mirror, lighting Dominic's unconscious body being dragged by guards toward another car. Good, he'd live. I needed him alive. Half a mile out, I hit the ridge and parked behind a boulder. The horizon glowed orange from the burning airstrip. Static rattled in the earpiece until Blake's voice broke through. Mason, you there? Got him, I said. Alive. Heading north. Mason, what happened? Bus bombing was a message for me, not the kids. Dominic confirmed it. Someone higher pulled the wire. Who? I don't know yet, I said, staring at the tracker ping blinking on the receiver. But I'm about to find out. By dawn, I was back in the temporary motel on the outskirts of Tucson. The TV buzzed with news. Unexplained explosion on a private strip near Nogales. No casualties reported, no arrests. Just smoke on the horizon. The camera zoomed out, and I saw him, Dominic, arm in a sling, face covered, stepping into a government vehicle. So he was protected, useful to someone. I muted the screen and looked into the cracked mirror. The reflection of a man who had already crossed every line worth crossing looked back. Harper's voice echoed from memory. If you go down there, you won't come back. She was right. The man sitting here wasn't the one she'd married. He was quieter, colder, focused. I opened the map again. The tracker ping flashed steady over Phoenix. Coordinates leading to a corporate facility registered under an innocuous name, Aegis Defense Systems. Private contractors. Federal money. Exactly what Dominic warned me about. I holstered the pistol, grabbed my jacket, and locked the door behind me. One last op, I said under my breath. The kind that ends everything. The ping led straight to downtown Phoenix, a mirrored tower pretending to be just another tech office. Aegis Defense Systems. Shiny entryway. Security staff too alert to be civilians. Everyone carried the calm tension of people armed even when their hands were empty. I parked across the street and slipped into a parking garage 3 levels down, feeding my last stolen access code into the gate. The receiver blinked steady. Dominic's tracker sat on the 18th floor. Inside, everything smelled of bleach and new paint. Aegis wasn't just laundering money, it was laundering history. On the elevator wall, promotional posters bragged about strategic partnerships with federal agencies. In the fine print, I spotted a signature, Chairman Nathaniel Solano. So Rafe's father hadn't retired into comfort. He'd built a corporate front and dressed the cartel in suits. The elevator doors opened into what looked like a boardroom. Floor-to-ceiling glass, American flag in one corner. Dominic stood beside a thin older man with white hair slicked back, Nathaniel himself. Dominic turned when he sensed me. You move faster than we expected. I didn't raise my gun. I didn't need to yet. You're tracing your own beacon, I said. That's how confident you've gotten. Nathaniel smiled faintly. It's how predictable you've become, Mr. Reed. I admired your work once. Discipline, precision. Shame you never learned when to stop. You bombed a school bus, I said. Call that precision? He poured himself coffee, unbothered. Collateral damage. Your daughter wasn't the target. The driver was a problem for both sides. We protect long-term stability. You understand that from your service days. Dominic stood silent, eyes avoiding mine. Is that what this is? I asked. Stability? Partnership, Nathaniel said. Aegis signs federal contracts to supply tactical equipment overseas. The cartel handles distribution where uniformed men can't. Everyone wins. Except the ones who resist evolvement. You mean honest people, I said. He practiced a sad smile. There's no such category left. I stepped forward. Security moved instantly, 3 men with earpieces flanking the hall. Dominic lifted his hand slightly, halting them. Keep this clean, he said. He just wants closure. Wrong, I said. I want truth. Nathaniel leaned on the desk. Truth doesn't sell, Mr. Reed. Stability does. Men like you build it. Men like me own it. I could have fired right then. One pull. End of line. But that wouldn't clear Harper's name or prove anything. I needed evidence. Instead, I memorized every detail. The files on the table, the network map projected behind them, the next target pinned on the slide, Federal Courthouse, Tuesday 0900. A big red cross over the storage vault holding every document about the bus case. Nathaniel noticed my eyes shift. "Ah," he said softly. "You see too much." I ran before they could contain me. Fire alarms blared as I broke through the stairwell and down 13 floors. By the time I hit the lobby, glass shattered above me, a warning volley. I dove into the street, stealing a motorcycle from the curb. Bullets cracked concrete behind me as I sped into traffic, vanishing into the maze of city lights. By the time I reached the motel, Harper was gone. The bed was neatly made. On the pillow lay her wedding ring and a folded note. "Mason, I've made things worse than you know. I thought I could fix it by talking to Dominic. I was wrong. Nathaniel's coming for the courthouse. If I can stop him, maybe you'll finally be free. Don't follow me, please. H." The handwriting blurred under my thumb. My chest felt hollow and burning all at once. She was walking into a trap, trying to undo what terror had forced her to help build. The courthouse. 0900. I checked my watch. 4:17 a.m. By sunrise, I was outside downtown court. Law enforcement cordoned off one side of the building for maintenance. Engineers rolled in large cases, too large for tools. I counted patterns, routes, shadows. It wasn't maintenance. It was staging. Through a sniper's scope, I scanned faces. Harper emerged from a service door, escorted by two men in black suits. Her wrists weren't tied, but her posture screamed coercion. Then Nathaniel stepped into view, calm and proud, briefcase in hand. He opened it just long enough for me to see, but only I would read the shape inside. A small detonation switch connected to twin frequencers. They were strapping C4 under the courthouse to erase every record linking Aegis to R12. And Harper was standing right beside him. My finger tightened on the trigger before I stopped myself. If I sniped him now, the blast could arm itself automatically. I had to get closer. I packed the rifle, exhaled once, and whispered, "Hold on, Harper. You don't die fixing their sins." Then I slipped into the moving crowd, heart hammering to the rhythm of approaching thunder. Through radio static, Blake's voice cracked through. "Mason, the Bureau just flagged an explosion threat. Courthouse, 20 minutes. Tell me you're not already there." "I'm inside," I said, eyes locked on the detonator glinting in Nathaniel Solano's hand. "This ends today." The courthouse looked ordinary on the surface. Reporters gathering for an upcoming corruption trial. Lawyers sipping coffee on the steps. Nobody saw the storm under their shoes. I entered through the service corridor, where the security guard recognized my fake ID and waved me through. The air smelled like cleaning solvents and old paper. Too still for a building this busy. Every sense in me screamed that the place was already wired. Through the earpiece, Blake's voice came thin and urgent. "Mason, feds are en route, 10 minutes out. You can't be inside when they arrive." "Copy," I said. "I only need 5. The blueprint loaded on my tablet. A network of tunnels beneath the main hall, perfect for burying evidence. And bodies. Down the first stairwell, I found what I'd expected, a maintenance crate filled with wiring and compressed charges. Someone had disguised them as lighting batteries. When I peeled the cover back, I saw the stamp burned into the metal. S12EX. Same series. The same explosives that took Lila's bus. My throat tightened, but my hands stayed steady. I started counting trigger nodes, tracing wires. 3 circuits, 2 manual switches, 1 remote failsafe. Sophisticated, which meant Nathaniel wasn't relying on a single plan. Footsteps echoed behind me. I turned instantly, weapon raised, and found Harper. "Mason, put it down," she whispered. She looked exhausted, makeup smeared, hands shaking. "They brought me here. Said if I didn't do what they told me, they'd finish what they started. But I figured it out. Mason, Nathaniel's not destroying evidence. He's removing witnesses. The courthouse is full of people testifying against his company. You think I didn't see that briefcase?" I asked. "That detonator in his hand means everyone upstairs dies in the name of stability." Her voice cracked. He told me if I helped, you'd walk free. No charges, no blacklists. I just wanted it all to end. It ends now, I said. Together. She nodded toward the wires. Then help me switch it. There's a decoy loop here. If we cross it, the detonation route reroutes to itself. Self-cancels. I studied her eyes. Honest. Broken. Still fighting. All right, I said. On my mark. We worked fast. Wire after wire. My training came back like reflex. She followed each motion, careful, precise. For a moment, we were a team again, the soldier and the medic, the way we started. Then a voice thundered through the tunnel. Drop it, Reed. Dominic's voice. He stepped out of the shadows, gun drawn. 2 cartel guards behind him. His shoulder was still wrapped in gauze from the last encounter. Harper froze. Dominic, please, he's trying to save you. Dominic said, that's not how this story ends. Nathaniel said remove every variable. That includes you both. Think for yourself for once. I leveled my gun at him. You served with me. You know how this feels, the pattern repeating, innocent lives treated like numbers. He laughed, strained. You don't get it, Mason. Without men like Nathaniel, Delta wouldn't exist. We're just tools. The only way to control the game is to own the board. You think you own it. I said, look around. You're standing in a grave. Before he could respond, the building groaned above us, a vibration rolling through concrete. The first timer had armed. Harper grabbed Dominic's wrist. Help us stop him or die with him. Something flickered in his eyes. Maybe guilt. Maybe memory. He hesitated, then hurled his gun at one of the guards and punched the other across the jaw. The first fired wildly. Harper ducked as the shot grazed her arm. I returned fire, clean, dropping both. Smoke filled the corridor, alarms bleeding red light across the walls. Dominic turned to me, chest heaving. You've got 40 seconds before this whole block goes. The primary fail-safes by the switch. Nathaniel keeps a manual key. Where? He looked up. Judge's lobby. 30 feet above you. I didn't waste another word. Harper, stay here. If this thing goes, cut the main cable and run. No, she said, blood running from her sleeve. We finish it together. We sprinted through the maintenance stairwell, burst into the marble hall where judges usually took coffee between hearings. Debris rattled from the ceiling. Nathaniel stood at the far end with the detonator in his hand, phone pressed to his ear. He turned slowly when he saw us. Calm as always. Mason Reed, he said. Always where the mess is thickest. End it. I said, weapon fixed on him. You can't fix anything, he said. Even if I die, the network rebuilds. Aegis is the bloodstream now. That's fine, I said. I just need to stop this heartbeat. Harper stepped forward, voice trembling. Nathaniel, you lied to me. You said he'd be safe if I cooperated. I said he'd be alive, Nathaniel corrected. Not free. She lunged, trying to grab the detonator. The move was desperate, but it worked. The remote clattered across the floor, sliding between desks. I dove for it as Nathaniel pulled a concealed pistol. The shot cracked thunder through marble. Harper gasped, stumbling back into my arms. Harper. I caught her, warm blood flooding beneath my fingers. Stay with me, look at me. Her eyes fluttered. It's not armed, she whispered. I switched the line, it won't blow. Nathaniel aimed again, but Dominic appeared behind him, bloodied, limping, expression hollow. Without a word, he fired once. Nathaniel fell, shock twisting on his face as he hit the floor. Dominic lowered the gun, breathing hard. Your family deserved better, he said quietly. So did mine. Then he dropped the weapon and raised his hands when police sirens wailed outside. He didn't even run. I held Harper in my arms until the alarms faded. She smiled faintly. Tell her about us, she whispered. Lila, I asked, my throat breaking. She nodded once. Make her proud. Her hand slipped from mine. The world went still. Hours later, daylight spilled across the courthouse steps. The news drones hovered, scanning the wrecked marble and lingering smoke. The FBI had taken Dominic. Nathaniel's body was zipped into a black bag. Reporters shouted names, theories, questions. I walked past them like a ghost, covered in dust and silence. Blake met me near an ambulance. His face said everything. "I'm sorry, Mason. She saved thousands. The evidence survived because you stopped the chain." I didn't answer. I couldn't. He placed a small envelope in my hand. "Found this in her pocket." Inside was a single note, written in her neat, tired handwriting. "Finish what I started. Go to the canyon." By that evening, I was on the road again. The desert stretched endless ahead, orange light pouring over cracked rock, the kind of silence she used to love. The canyon wasn't on any map. It was ours, our hiding place during the early years when the world still made sense. I parked at the ridge, the wind rising cold and sharp. Down below, an old storage box waited exactly where we'd buried it a decade ago. Inside, wrapped in cloth, was a small drive, Harper's evidence logs. Hundreds of files tying Aegis and the Solano network to international weapons trafficking, and one final video recording. I pressed play. Her voice, faint but steady. "If you're watching this, you made it. Mason, I never stopped loving you. I just lost faith in the world you fought for. But you can still make it mean something. End it. Not with bullets, but with truth." The screen faded. I sat there until the desert changed color, her voice echoing beneath the wind. The revenge I thought I wanted was over. What remained was something heavier, justice. I started the engine. Tomorrow, the world would know everything. The canyon was too quiet. No plain trails, no coyotes, no wind. Just that heavy silence deserts keep for the dead. I sat on the ridge watching the sun crawl over the horizon. Harper's drive lay on the dashboard, small enough to fit in my palm, heavy enough to ruin empires. She'd died for that piece of metal. Now it was my turn to decide what her sacrifice meant. I plugged it into the laptop, fingers trembling slightly. The screen blinked, loaded a single folder labeled Eden. Inside, hundreds of classified PDFs, voice files, and encrypted ledgers unfolded line by line. Names I recognized from Washington to Mexico City. Companies masking cartel finances. Defense contracts exchanged for narcotics cash routed through shell corporations. Even special operations signatures embedded in transactions. Our own system paying our enemies to fight our wars. It was all there. The real war hidden beneath the one we were told we fought. I scrolled until one line froze me cold. Project Eden authorized by Chairman N. Solano in coordination with Aegis Defense Systems and U.S. Senate Subcommittee for Foreign Stability. Harper had gathered not just proof of corruption, proof of government complicity. For a long moment, I couldn't move. All the years, all the missions, every drop of blood we'd called patriotism, it had been theater for profit. I whispered, "You found the monster, Harper, and you married the soldier it created." By midday, dust clouds rose on the horizon. A pair of vehicles, dark, unmarked, snaking through the desert toward me. I packed fast, slipped down the canyon's backside, and set up a decoy fire near the ridge. They'd see smoke, think I was above. Old tricks still worked. As I hiked the ravine, the phone in my pocket vibrated. A secure line, blocked ID. Blake's voice crackled. "They've traced the leak path from the courthouse. Whatever's on that drive, Mason, it's nuclear. They're mobilizing private contractors right now to erase every copy." "Then I'd better start multiplying them," I said. "Listen," he added, voice low. "Grant's gone. Car accident last night. They're cleaning house. You need to vanish." "Not yet," I said. "Not until it's out. Mason, they'll bury you alive." "They already did once," I replied, and hung up. At a narrow rock shelf, I opened Harper's files again, launching the pre-programmed upload she'd hidden in the code. She'd planned this from the start. Mirror servers across continents waiting for a single trigger phrase. The screen blinked. Upload initiating, passcode required. Her hint echoed in my head from the recording. Make her proud. Lila's birth date. I typed 0309, Her birthday, March 9th. The drive word. A status bar slid across the screen. 25%, 47%, 73%. Then gunfire cracked above me. 2 shots snapping through rock. Dust rained down. I slammed the laptop shut, crawling toward cover. A silencer hissed. Close, professional. I peeked over the ledge. 2 men in desert camo scanning with scopes, moving fast. No cartel tattoos. Military posture. Probably Aegis retrievers. I slipped the drive into my pocket, tossed an empty magazine downhill as distraction, then circled around them. When one leaned to check the sound, I came up silent behind him, disarmed, and slammed his own rifle stock into his neck. He dropped without a sound. The second spun, firing. The round grazed my shoulder, hot and clean. I returned 1 shot, ended it. The canyon swallowed the echo, leaving only my heartbeat. I stripped 1 comm unit from the first man. A British voice crackled through. Alpha Team status? I pressed the button. Status is terminated. Static answered. That would buy me minutes. I retreated deeper into an abandoned ranger hut near the canyon wall and rebooted the laptop. The upload had finished before the attack, 99% marked complete. Harper's preset destination code showed 3 coordinates: London, Toronto, and New York. Every drop of evidence had just gone global. My body shook, not from pain, but from release. For the first time, the truth wasn't buried under classified ink. I watched network trackers spike on the screen, journalists' feeds lighting up as files hit public servers. A headline flashed within minutes. Leaked documents tied defense contractors to cartel wars. Harper did it. Through me, she did it. I whispered to the empty room. You win, Harper. You stopped the ghosts. Night fell before the adrenaline faded. The desert went still again, but I couldn't leave yet. Too many variables. I cleaned the wound on my shoulder, taped it shut, then went outside, sitting by the dying fire. Sometimes silence feels like forgiveness. Tonight, it felt like interrogation. Was justice worth every life lost to get it? Before I could answer myself, the comm unit I'd stolen clicked alive. Weak signal, 1 unlisted channel. An electron flat voice came through, distorted. Impressive work, Sergeant Reed. Upload complete. I froze. Who is this? You exposed Solano. Good. 1 cancer cut out. But did you really think the sickness stops there? What do you want? I want you to understand, the voice said. Solano was a contractor. The architect still breathes, and she's been paying your bills for years. Check your old service pension. Line item, Kensington Trust. Kensington Trust. The signature on every delayed payment Harper and I received after I retired. I said nothing. You think you're the only ghost left? The voice taunted. Look deeper. Eden was just a test field. The line cut. Wind eased through the canyon like a warning. Far across the ridge, headlights shimmered and vanished again. Maybe they were searching. Maybe they were waiting for orders. Either way, the hunt wasn't over. I stood, pocketing the drive's shell. You lied to me, too. I muttered to whatever ghost owned that voice. Behind me, the stars flickered, bright, watchful, ancient. I thought of Harper, of Lila, of every name written on those files. The truth was out, but the war built on it still stood. I whispered to the desert, 1 step at a time. You take down 1 king at a time. Then I walked toward the truck, shoulder aching, the horizon bleeding red before dawn. Harper's letter lay on the seat when I climbed in, creased, faded, invisible until now. On the back, another line I hadn't seen. If this reaches the world, drive east, someone will find you there. When I started the engine, the radio cut to breaking news. A global investigation is underway following a historic leak connecting the Aegis Defense Systems conglomerate to a network of cartel and governmental corruption. Several officials have resigned amid pending indictments. I turned off the volume. On the horizon, the first rays of morning slipped over the canyon walls, painting the desert gold. Harper would have liked that light. I drove east, following the empty road until the canyon narrowed, wondering what waited beyond, the rest of the machine or the peace she'd promised. Either way, I wasn't done. Because some wars don't end, they change shape. And I had one last battle to finish. The canyon stayed behind me like a scar fading in the rear mirror. I drove east until the desert gave way to the smell of rain and pine, where the road lost its edges and turned into something softer. The world had shifted. Harper's voice still lived in that small drive. Lila's laughter echoed in my head like a heartbeat that refused to stop, and every mile took me further from the man they once tried to control. 3 weeks had passed since I leaked the files. In that short time, the world changed faster than bullets travel. The media named the scandal the Eden Protocol. Overnight, senators vanished from public sight, bank accounts froze, CEOs disappeared behind private hearings. It was chaos disguised as justice. But it wasn't over, not for me. Because ghosts don't die when headlines fade. They linger in the silent moments, waiting for you to remember them. My first stop was the town Harper mentioned. It was barely a place. 2 diners, 1 gas station, a courthouse older than my regrets, and a railway bridge humming in the wind. On the courthouse steps stood a woman I recognized from the files. Judge Fiona Cross, one of the few who hadn't folded to Aegis. She looked smaller in person, but her eyes had that unshakable steadiness you only see in people who have already survived their crucifixion. "You look tired, Sergeant Reed," she said when I approached. "Tired feels like freedom now," I told her. We talked inside the empty courthouse, just 2 souls among dust and distant thunder. She poured weak coffee from a thermos and slid a thick envelope across the table. "Harper sent this to me months before her death," Fiona said. "Said to give it to you only if the truth ever reached daylight." The envelope contained copies of flight manifests, Paycom logs, and one last confession, stamped Aegis Defense Systems Internal Audit, Confidential. In it, Nathaniel Solano confessed his company's partnership with defense politicians, calling it maintaining profitable instability. Every signature under it was real, including Dominic Hale's. "She wanted you to know it worked," Fiona said quietly. "Your family didn't die for a secret no one believed." I stared at the papers, feeling something heavy in my throat. "So what happens to people like them now?" "Their empire collapses slowly," she replied. "Justice burns like oil. It clings before it disappears." "And what happens to people like me?" She smiled sadly. "You disappear gracefully. That's the only happy ending men like you get." By nightfall, I checked into a roadside motel built from forgotten dreams. I watched rain carve rivers through the dust on the window glass. Harper's ring lay on the nightstand beside my old Delta patch. So small, so harmless, yet each one carried a world's worth of weight. I didn't sleep much. Memories kept walking through the room. Harper bandaging my shoulder in Kandahar, Lila's laugh when she drew smiley faces on my mission patches, the bus's pink shoe lying on the asphalt. Each one cut and healed at the same time. At dawn, I packed the ring and the drive into a box labeled, "To be opened if I don't return." Old habit dies slower than guilt. Then I left. Not running, just leaving. Halfway through the mountains, the radio caught a familiar voice. "Today marks the 3rd week since the military and corporate scandal known as Eden exploded into global light. Judge Fiona Cross announced new trials against Aegis's senior partners. Anonymous insiders confirmed the key whistleblower remains unidentified. Rumors say he's a former Delta Force operative connected to the Solano Cartel missions." I turned it off. No more ghosts through static. The clouds began to clear, and for the first time in years, I noticed color again. The road ahead looked like forgiveness. When I reached the edge of a small lake, I stopped the truck. It wasn't on any map. It felt like Harper must have found it years ago, maybe on one of her lonely drives when I was overseas. A willow leaned over the water, its branches brushing the surface like fingers saying goodbye. I sat down by the shore, opened the last envelope from her folder, and found a note written in her looping hand. Mason, if you ever reach this place, breathe. You spend your whole life holding your breath for the next strike. Breathe, even if it hurts. You were never the monster they made you believe you were. The ink had faded, but her words hit harder than any bullet ever had. I closed my eyes and breathed. Slowly, deeply. The air smelled of rain, earth, and peace. Maybe for the first time, I realized I wasn't chasing an enemy anymore. I was chasing a memory of the man my daughter believed I was. A few days later, a letter arrived at the motel. No return address. Inside, a single typed sentence. You think it ends with Solano? I stared at it for a long minute, then smiled faintly. Of course not. Corruption never ends. It only changes uniforms. But it no longer owned me. I'd done what I came to do. I folded the note, set it on the fireplace, and watched flames swallow it whole. Weeks passed differently now. I fixed generators for locals, cleaned the church roof when storms hit, and taught a high school kid how to aim right. Not to kill, but to survive. Ordinary things. No code names, no mission designations. Just living. Sometimes I'd sit on a small pier at sunset, skipping stones across calm water. And when one splashed perfectly, I heard Lila's giggle again in the wind. I looked up and said into the fading sky, "We finally made it, kid." The breeze carried only peace back. One evening, Fiona Cross phoned me. "They've officially dismantled Aegis," she said. "The trials are public next week. The world owes you gratitude you'll never receive." "I don't need gratitude," I told her. "Just silence." "You deserve more than silence, Mason." "Silence is more," I said. She laughed softly, and for a moment it felt almost normal. Two people talking, not survivors trading ghosts. Before hanging up, she added, "For what it's worth, the Bureau classified your file as terminated. To them, you no longer exist." "Good," I said. Existing never suited me. That night, under a milk-white sky, I wrote Harper and Lila's names together in the sand and let the tide erase them. Some wounds were never meant to close. They just teach you how to walk with them. Revenge had taken me to the edge of the world, but it was love that finally walked me home. When dawn came, I packed my things into the truck and drove out onto the highway one last time. In the distance, the horizon glowed like fire, but for once, it didn't look dangerous. It looked like tomorrow. And now, before this story goes quiet,